personally really dislike that magic loop and traveling loop are treated as like two completely different techniques. There are two main reasons why I really don't like that. For a real quick reminder, magic loop is a technique for knitting on round on circular needles for projects that have smaller circumference than the cable length. For really small circumference projects like socks or sleeves, you will need two splitting points so stitches don't get stretched out and you have enough space to move your needles. For bigger circumferences, you need only one splitting point because the needles have enough space to move around freely, and regardless of how many splitting points you have, you can always easily move stitches from one needle to the other. First reason why I don't like that those get treated as two completely different techniques is that magic loop tutorials very often don't include the information that you don't always need the two splits, that you can also use this same thing for knitting on bigger circumferences. It is so misleading to people who have just started knitting. I've seen countless comments both on my videos and others where people are surprised that you don't always need to split your project in two bits. And also TikTok is full of videos where someone is just discovering that, oh, there's a better way how to knit magic loop, and it's still magic loop, but just with one split. And like, it's literally the same technique. And if you're one of those newer knitters and you were never told that if you have enough stitches on your needles, you don't need to split them in half, I'm sorry that nobody told you. Tutorials should do better. Second reason for my dislike is that the bigger knitting world never uses this distinction at all. For example, when you look at knitting patterns, when a designer mentions that this pattern is knit on magic loop, in most cases, what designer actually means is that this pattern is knit on round on circular needles. It doesn't mean that you can't move stitches between your needles. It doesn't mean that you need to split your project in two bits. It wouldn't make any sense. There are rare exceptions like patterns for socks. That's why it's so important for knitters to understand what they are doing and to understand what is the technique that's asked of them instead of creating an artificial divide on the same exact technique. For me, a pretty good example is a hat. When you start knitting at the brim, you will usually have enough stitches to have just one splitting point, so you can use the traveling loop to knit it up. But when you get to the decreases, you won't have as many stitches. You will need to split those stitches in half, and now you would be knitting on magic loop. But you are still doing the same thing. It doesn't make sense to treat those two things as two completely different techniques.